And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what?
China.
All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China.
Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Exactly. Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
The lion won't sleep tonight, 'cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight, 'cause we woke now, and we woke now. They want us to sell our souls to barter profit. Like God's property, it's hard to market. So we steady to aim, keep your eyes on target. 'Cause when you got to drive, yeah, they'd rather you park it. But I don't valet, you ain't getting these keys. I'm keeping closed hands, I'm on bended knee. I'm just a reflection, dealing with 8 sections. Art mixed with life, you can feel the convection. Your lion won't sleep tonight, 'cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight, 'cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said
the same people that have stripped us of our identity and labeled us as a color have told us what it means to be black.
The white man is enacting a story all over the world. We left our homes and flooded the world. We smothered culture. We smothered knowledge. We erased history and rewrote it our way. Myself, my grandfather is 100% Ashkenazi Jewish. Claiming to be Jewish, Ashkenazi Jewish is just a conspiracy. White men claiming to be of tribes of Israel when I'm Germanic. You know, I have no ties to Israel, no ties to Judaism. You know, except loosely written history that's been whitewashed over for centuries. And, you know,
from the Renaissance.
Oh yeah, right. You wipe everything clean. It's funny how exactly the Renaissance. It's this rebirth, but it's white rebirth. I think at the same exact time the Renaissance is happening, Columbus is sailing to America and committing genocide.
The same people that have stripped us of our identity and labeled us as a color have told us what it means to be black.
There's only one true ethnic Jew, the Mizrahi Jew, because they are Africans, and if you read the original Bible written in Phoenician Hebrew, they're not. Jewish people are not Europeans. The modern Jews in Israel are Russians or khazars to be precise, from Russia. I learned it from my grandfather that because he was an Ashkenazi Jew.
The same people that have stripped us of our identity and labeled us as a color have told us what it means to be black.
I'm so glad you're here because you can bring great clarity. Can you tell us a little bit about the Sephardic Jews and how they were scattered because they went west?
I sure can.
Because the reason why I want to is because a lot of them, and a lot of people don't know this, are in the Caribbean.
They are.
In the islands.
And you're one of them. I know that.
One of them.
I know that.
Because, you know, a lot of folk don't know that those roots are there. One of the first batches of slaves that came to Jamaica, they were the Sephardic Jews. It's documented.
And they're all over the Caribbean, South America, Central America, and even the South Central United States.
Wow.
And DNA testing is a factor in all this now.
The same people that have stripped us of our identity and labeled us as a color have told us what it means to be black.
You know what you are? You're an ancient Israelite.
Ancient Israelite, that's who we are. That's who we are. So if you give me time, if you give me time, all that he said.
I know. We don't have
so many years.
I know. Look at this. This is pages and pages of notes. And I promise we'll give more teaching. But here is my challenge to you.
All right.
I'm hearing some of your traditions. It's like the days of the Bible.
Yes.
Do you want to remain ancient Israelites or you want to be Jews? Do you want to remain ancient?
The same people that have stripped us of our identity and labeled us as a color have told us what it means to be black.
Assalamu alaikum. In the 13th tribe, Arthur Koestler traces the origin of Eastern Europe's Jewish population that was largely decimated by the Nazi onslaught during the Second World War. Through extensive research, he discusses the history of a trading empire that was set up by a tribe known as the Khazars. The Khazar Empire.
I was a Christian missionary for years, but there came a time in my life when I realized that what I was taught about the Bible was a lie. In my confusion, I cried out for help. I met an Israelite who introduced me to the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, who is described in the Bible as having hair white as wool and eyes red as fire. Yes, the God in the Bible is black.
Assalamu alaikum. In the 13th tribe, Arthur Koestler traces the origin of Eastern Europe's Jewish population that was largely decimated by the Nazi onslaught during the Second World War. Through extensive research, he discusses the history of a trading empire that was set up by a tribe known as the Khazars. The Khazar Empire was located between the expanding power blocks of Christianity and Islam, and the people were converted to Judaism by their king as a way of standing apart from both. The Khazarians and their wealth were dispersed through the countries of Eastern Europe after the collapse of the Khazar Empire. The Khazarians were not a Semitic people, that they called themselves Jews after their conversion to Judaism is as absurd as the Chinese Muslims calling themselves Arabs.
It does not matter what color Jesus was. What matters is that he came to the earth, lived a perfect life, died a death for the sins of the world, and then conquered the grave, proving that he is the Son of God. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
It just doesn't matter. 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 It just doesn't matter.
Now I can't figure it out. If y'all are the chosen ones, shouldn't y'all be obeying better than me? I mean, I even try to keep the fourth commandment. Try to keep the Sabbath day holy. I've spent many of hours trying to figure out which is the right Sabbath day, 'cause we know that old Catholic Church, something a little fishy about them, don't we? With that white Jesus. I mean, here's a white guy telling you black people that your Messiah is not a long-haired white European guy. Your Messiah is Hebrew, my darker-skinned brothers and sisters. When are you guys going to wake up and become kings and queens?
Okay, I was just thinking about this morning. I grew up Baptist. I went to Vacation Bible School. I've read the Bible. I don't know if I'm interpreting it correctly, but if we are made in God's image, right, and the first modern humans originated in Africa, if God has a human form, God is black. God is black.
Why do you always talk about black men or black people? Please stop. Please go to Mexican people or Chinamen or white men. Please leave us alone. God bless. My friend, why are you being mean? Let me tell you a story, okay? Not just you, but everybody. Everybody's listening right now. So Martin Luther King Jr. says, I have a dream. But for me, I'm gonna tell you, I have a vision. I have a dream. But for me, I'm gonna tell you, I have a vision. I have a dream. But for me, I'm gonna tell you, I have a vision. So Martin Luther King Jr. says, I have a dream. But for me, I'm gonna tell you, I have a vision. My vision was that God is black. He is black as a charcoal.
God's people, the Most High has chosen, the Hebrews, the blacks in America, okay? We're about to see some power. Come on, y'all. You got to get out of this lie, okay? You got to get out of this lie. You have got to come out of this lie. This white Jesus that you are worshiping is going to take you to hell. Please wake up. Oh, in the name of Yahushua, wake up. Oh, I feel the Holy Ghost. Oh, hallelujah. Hallelujah. Yahushua is an alpha, strong, black man. He is a negro. He is a Hebrew. I don't know what word you need to hear to understand who they are, but it is not me. I am not a chosen. You can get mad. It doesn't matter. This is how the Most High has done it. I am a Gentile, and I know my place. But I'm called to tell all of these Gentile whites that I know that you are in the deepest deception that you have ever been in. And you have been in it your whole life. And the awakening is happening now. People are waking up.
That's why I'm convinced Jesus was black, you know, because he hasn't come back yet. Like, that's the... He said, I will be back at an hour that you least expect it. That is the blackest thing I've ever heard in my life. He's going to confuse the hell out of everybody, all the white people when he comes back, too. Because he's like, it's been a minute. White people will be like, it's been 2,000 years, Jesus. What are you talking about?
Genesis chapter 11, verse 10. Explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you.
I want to say peace and blessings to everyone. I want to say Shabbat Shalom to some and Shabbat Shalom to others. Hope and pray all is well with you guys. I decided to do an unscheduled live. Actually, I had a live schedule, but it was to do, it was on a different subject. And I just decided that I'm just going to let that subject rest for a little bit. And I'll continue it. I'll pick back up on that subject at a later time. But just want to do part 2 of this lesson here. Our fathers inherited lies. Pick the red pill. So I wanted to just kind of piggyback off of that lesson. This is actually about the second half of that lesson. This is a lesson I put together for for our pop-up Shabbats. I have other information that I share, but I want to do part 2 to this lesson. If you haven't seen part 1, if you haven't reviewed part 1, I encourage you guys, go and watch part 1. It is loaded with information, and especially if you guys have loved ones that you're trying to witness this truth to, that's a great lesson that gives a lot of information about who we are. Give historical sources as far as maps, and it just really walks you through a number of questions that many have in that regards. So this is a continuation with that lesson. And got a couple other lessons I'm going to do over the next week or two. I want to really go back over a lesson, reteach it. For example, the 613 law doctrine. And I want to make it clear, family, there is no 613 laws. That doctrine is all based from Jewish mysticism, as I explained in the post. But unfortunately, some people will take it and run with all kinds of narratives. But I want to make it clear, when I say start with the 10 Commandments, just like the Constitution of the United States has the 10 Bill of Rights, those are the foundational laws that make up the Constitution. And then with that being said, you have laws, ordinances, statutes that explains how to carry out the Constitution. Likewise, the 10 Commandments is the words of the covenant, which is, this tells you that in Exodus chapter 34, the words of the covenant. So you start with the foundational 10. Everything outside of that, everything that comes afterwards is going to tell you how to keep the covenant, whether it's the dietary laws, whether it's the laws against bestiality, all of that's going to direct you right back to the foundational 10. That's what the Messiah was saying when in Matthew chapter 22, when he was asked, what is the great commandment? Not what commandment should we only follow and the other ones are thrown away. He was asked, what is the greatest of all the commandments? And he said, love the Father. And then he said, the second is like unto the first, love each other. But he didn't stop there. He said, the law, which is the first 5 books, and the prophets, you guys already know what the books of the prophets are, will teach you these 2 principles, these key principles. And that points you right back to the commandments. Matthew chapter 19, the rich young man asks the Messiah, what must he do to obtain eternal life? The Messiah started with the commandments. He said, honor the commandments. But then he began to quote directly from the covenant. The 10 Commandments is the words of the covenant. Anyone else tell you something differently is an absolute lie. You can see it within the scriptures. But nevertheless, just want to kind of make sure that people have a proper understanding of where the teaching comes from. And if you study any legal system, you would understand you have a constitution. In the scriptures, we refer to that as the covenant. You start off with that, and then all the laws, statutes, and commandments are going to point you right back to the foundational 10. The United States mimicked scripture, mimicked our covenant with the Most High, right? And other countries have as well. So I want to make that clear. All the commandments is going to point you back to the foundational 10, period, the covenant. Everything outside of that is teaching you how to keep the covenant. You get outside of that, what are you doing? You're breaking the covenant. But anyway, so just thought I put that out there, but I'm going to do a full teaching on that. That's going to walk you guys through step by step on how to approach the covenant, to approach the law, statutes, and commandments. All right. But nevertheless, let's get into what we're going to cover tonight. We're going to cover our fathers inherited lies. So if you don't have a notepad, get a notepad, a pen and pad, because I am going to share some sources. Got a lot to cover here. Some of this is going to be some of the stuff that I've already taught, but it'll be a refresher to many of you guys and moderators. If there's anyone within the chat that are being disruptive, being disrespectful, you guys know what to do. If there's those within the chat that are taken away from the overall presentation, give them a warning. And if they continue to do so, put them out the chat. Because again, I'm not doing these lessons for likes and subscribes and all that other stuff. I'm doing this for you guys. And I know some of you guys that are here, if not all of you guys that are following We Woke Now, you just want the pure, unadulterated truth. You don't want any fluff. You just want to do like what the mission that I am on. You just want to do exactly what the Father says, and you've made that transition out of Christianity, and you're like, okay, what should we do? What do we need to do? And that's what this is all about, is to show you what we need to do. We all got out of Christianity for a reason, but we did not jump out of Christianity and then jump into another religion, jump into the frying pan, or out of the frying pan into the fire of Judaism, then jump out of the frying pan of Christianity and get into all this other mystical stuff that, the Jewish community as we know them has led so many into. So again, you can accept it or reject it, but this is what we teach over here at We Woke Now. We don't care about all the other stuff that others are teaching. We here is going to teach foundational truth. All right. And so Shabbat rest. We'll do that. We'll do a special lesson on this upcoming first day of the week. We'll actually I'll teach on, because I had to continue on with the feast days. So we'll teach on, initially I did the blowing of the trumpets. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. I did that last week. So we're going to do the Day of Atonement. And then from there, we're going to do the Feast of Tabernacles. And we'll do a special session for the calendar dates on how to align with the dates, the biblical dates, not based on the Gregorian calendar, but the actual calendar our ancestors had used from the beginning. All right. So really appreciate you guys. But let's go ahead and get into it. Again, we got a lot to cover. As you see, other nations are waking up. They are coming out publicly, making it clear about who we are. They're making it clear. You guys have seen a number of videos. I have special playlists for you guys from entertainers, making it clear that we're the people of the book, to people of other colors. And when I say other colors, you guys know what I mean. Other cultures and other races, they're making it clear we are the people of the book. They are fulfilling prophecy. Now, I know some of you guys may say, hey, Pastor, why are you posting this about the entertainers? Why are you posting this about other people saying who we are? We don't need them to validate us. It's not for us, it's for them and for those that may follow them. I've gotten a number of emails from people thanking me for posting those testimonies on this channel, and it helped them transition from out of Christianity into this truth. All right. So last thing I want to point out, I'll post the dates of when we're doing our Feast of Tabernacles. If you are in the Richmond area and you want to celebrate with us, I'll have the dates, times, location. Cost you nothing but just bringing out an appetite and a willing to celebrate the things of the Most High. All right. But anyway, family, let's go ahead and get into it. Our fathers inherited lies, part 2. Our fathers inherited lies, part 2. Now, I laid this out about the other nations that are going to, say or make it clear that they were living a sham. That's all it means. When they say that their father inherited lies, they're saying that their fathers were living a sham. And they were handing down through the generations, passing that sham down, that hustle, that deception down from generation to generation. And so we hear even a Christian missionary, she's a senior lady. She literally transitioned. now seeing the scriptures for exactly what they are, seeing us for exactly who we are. And I encourage you guys to go back and watch her entire testimony. But this is who I'm referring to if you haven't seen the clips early on.
I was a Christian missionary for years, but there came a time in my life when I realized that what I was taught about the Bible was a lie. In my confusion, I cried out for help. I met an Israelite who introduced me to the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, who is described in the Bible as having hair white as wool and eyes red as fire. Yes, the God in the Bible is black.
That's right. That's right. That's why I post those messages, those clips, for a reason. And I know some of you guys that understand that there's a logic to the madness per se. It's done for a purpose. It's done for a reason. So you guys could take these clips and share it. Share it with those that are still part of that delusion of Christianity. Right? You know, that way others can join in on this celebration. Do the dance like we're doing over here.
Life is like a hurricane here in Duckburg. Race cars, lasers, aeroplanes. It's a duck blur.
You even have cowboy. You have a cowboy. Come on now. I'll play it one more time, but you have the cowboy coming out. Here's the cowboy right here. Now, who would have thought that you would hear a cowboy sharing these words?
Now, I can't figure it out. If y'all are the chosen ones, shouldn't y'all be obeying better than me? I mean, I even try to keep the fourth commandment. Try to keep the Sabbath day holy. I've spent many of hours trying to figure out which is the right Sabbath day, because we know that old Catholic Church, something a little fishy about them, don't we? With that white Jesus. I mean, here's a white guy telling you black people that your Messiah is not a long-haired white European guy. Your Messiah is Hebrew, my darker-skinned brothers and sisters. When are you guys going to wake up and become kings and queens?
Life is like a hurricane here in Duckburg. Race cars, lasers, aeroplanes. It's a duck blur.
Family, you know we are living in a great time. A great time. And as the dispensationalists, you know, those that push the theology of dispensationalism, right? You know, they would say we're living in a great dispensation of time, right? That's a whole nother set of teachings, not getting into all of that, right? But again, when did we ever think that we are going to live to see the day that we're seeing? Many of you guys grew up in the church, and you know, if you would even mention that, because I grew up knowing who I am, and I was told that it didn't matter. I was told that it did not matter. And I'm sure you guys have heard this as well, but I was told that it didn't matter.
It does not matter what color Jesus was. What matters is that he came to the earth, lived a perfect life, died a death for the sins of the world, and then conquered the grave, proving that he is the Son of God. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
It just doesn't matter. 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 It just doesn't
Sure, you guys heard that before. I'm sure that you heard that before. So let's go ahead and get into it, family. Let's go ahead and get into it. All right. Don't want to take too much of your time because this is a part 2 is just as lengthy as part 1. But let's get into it. What are some of the truths you've inherited? We covered a lot in part 1, but that's the theme. That's the question. I continuously throughout part 1 asked the question, what are some of the truths you've inherited? In part 1, I broke down Hebrew Israelism. That is one of the lies that many are pushing. So I encourage you guys, go watch part 1. If you have not watched part 1, watch it. Watch that entire video over the weekend, and I address a number of lies, some the untruths, the shams that others are using to as an attempt to sabotage your walk, to sabotage this awakening. So, what are some of the untruths you've inherited? What do the old sources say about the Negro Israelites, Israelites that look like you and I? So I'm going to share a few sources here. Some of you guys may have seen these sources, but I want to, share this with you. Who do they say that that we are? You know what I mean? Who do they say that we are? What was they saying back in the 15th century? Because a lot of this stuff that you're seeing, there was a paradigm shift on the understanding of the skin complexion of the ancient Israelites. There was a paradigm shift of what those in the 15th century, how they saw the ancient Israelites versus what's being pushed today. Because I'm going to show you in the 15th century, the 16th century, they were not pushing what you see today, a Caucasian Messiah. They weren't pushing that the Egyptians, starting with Cleopatra, they was not pushing this Caucasian Cleopatra that you see today. And I am going to prove this in the course of this lesson. There's going to be some upset people. There's going to be some people that's going to troll this video afterwards if they're not trolling now, but they're going to troll. So let's go to some of the old sources, not this modern stuff. You have to go to some of the old sources to really extract and get an understanding of how and what they knew about the Negro Israelites, the Negroes, the Hebos, the Hebrews, the Ebos. You know what I mean? Some of the words that they began to mix and mesh, Hebo from from Hebrew to where we are today, Negro. So what are some of the old sources? Let's highlight a couple of old sources, but I have a key source that I do want to share with you guys that's going to really help bring this in. Right? Bring this in. It's going to really tighten things up, and it's going to give you, some ammunition to really witness to your brothers and sisters. So let's start with one. Right? This is travels in Holland, the United Provinces, England, Scotland, and Ireland. All right. This source is from the 18th century. Actually, it's the 16th century. But let's go ahead and see what it says. Let's just highlight a clip, a bullet out of here, and let's see how they described here they're using the word Jew. We already know Jew is not synonymous to all of Israel, but they used it as interchangeable with Israel. But let's see what they say here. They say here, they're men, most black, full of hair, and insatiably given unto women, their wives restrained and made prisoners, their widows distinguished from all other women, Jews by white veils hanging to their backs. They will not bury amongst the Gentiles. And what's interesting, when you start going into these old sources, I'm going to share a source here. I'm not sure if I'll put the bullets in here, but the stereotypes that they have for us today, they have the same stereotypes for our ancestors back in the 15th century, 16th century. They had a plan. They even had a plan on what they were going to do to try to mix and mesh us to make us more acceptable to their society. To make us more acceptable, the game plan was to basically try to water us down. And if I have time, I'll pull some bullets from there from this book. If not, we'll touch on that tomorrow night. I may even hold it off for tomorrow night because I want to do a lesson on where's Esau, what brown can do for you. All right. So that's still on for tomorrow night. Okay. But notice what it says here. They're men, most black, full of hair, and insatiably given unto women, their wives restrained and made prisoners, their widows distinguished from all other women, Jews by white veils hanging to their backs. So it's making it clear that these Israelites are dark melanated people. All right, dark melanated people. But then another source here, Memoirs of the Secret Service of John Mackey, Esquire, during the reigns of King Williams. Right now, notice what this says here, right? This has some great information here as well, but notice what it says here. All right. And excuse me for this being out of whack. It should have John Mackey here, not these guys here. All right. As you see here, John Mackey. But notice what he says about as you see here, Secretary of State. Notice what he says here. And this is dealing with as you see, a court of Great Britain, right? Secretary of State. Notice what it says about this Secretary of State. Let's see what it says. And as you see here, it says, is eldest son to Mr. Finch, Lord Chancellor in the reign of King Charles II. This gentleman, let me zoom it in because this is Old English. So that's why it's a little mixed up here. And if I fumble through it, it's because it's Old English. But this is making it clear we're dealing with the Secretary of State. Secretary of State. All right. So that's what this page rip here is dealing with. Earl Daniel, the Secretary of State. Earl Daniel of Nottingham, Secretary of State. And if we go to the next page, notice the description of Daniel. Notice the description of this Secretary of State. He hath also the exterior air of businesses and application enough to make him very capable. But notice what it says here. And his habit and manners very formal. A tall, thin, very black man, like a Spaniard or Jew about 50 years old. So this source is making it clear that the Jews are dark melanated people, as it deals with this particular person right here. But this is a great source right here, family. Shakespeare and the Jews. Because Shakespeare and what this book is based upon is about Shakespeare and his peers, Shakespeare and others during that time, on how and what they taught about the Jewish community, their appearance and all. It's so much in here I want to pull out, but I just pulled out some information. James Shapiro is who wrote this. This is a great source here, but let's just pull out some bullets from here and we'll go from there. It says here, and notice what it says. It says the accumulated experience over 100 years of travel, trade, and conquest had convinced Europeans that some of the accepted stereotypes of Jewish racial otherness, including the belief that Jews were black, needed to be qualified. When William Brereton jotted down his impressions of the Jews and the synagogue in Amsterdam in 1635, he noted that the Jewish men are most black. Notice what it says. It says the Jewish men are what? In my DMX voice, the Jewish men are what? You know what I mean? Notice what he says here. Are what? I'll zoom it in for the people in the back. This is not a typo. This is not a typo. Right? So it goes on to say, and insatiably given it to women, drawing here on contemporary prejudices, linking blackness to licentiousness. And when the Scottish minister Robert Kirk toured London in January 1690, he also paid a visit to the synagogue there, where he observed over 200 Jews worshiping. He noted in his journal that they were all very black men. Wait a minute. He said that, noted in his journal, that he went and visited a Jewish synagogue and noted that all of the men, they were
black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all. I'm blickety black, blacker than black, black, I'm blacker than black, yo, because I'm black and I'm back. Yo, I'm black and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all.
So you see, they made it clear. And let me read that portion of it again. It says here, and when the Scottish minister, and as you see, the prejudices, see, this is what I said to you, the things that we deal with today, this is what our ancestors were being viewed back at that time. All right. But again, he said in a synagogue in Amsterdam in 1635, he noted that the Jewish men are most black and insatiably given unto women. All right. So in a nutshell, they were basically using many of them as sex objects. All right. So where he observed over 200, and this is in, going to another person here. It says, and when the Scottish minister Robert Kirk toured London in January 1690, he also paid a visit to the synagogue there, where he observed over 200 Jews worshiping. He noted in his journal, this same synagogue, that they were all very black men and indistinct in their reasoning as gypsies. All right. It goes on to say a vulgar error that the Jews are all black. This mission observes is only true of the Portuguese Jews. So notice what it says here. It says the Portuguese Jews are all black, right? Who marrying always among one another, beget children like themselves. Consequently, the swarthiness of their complexion entailed upon their whole race, even in the northern regions. This is key. So when we see in these old sources about the Portuguese, when we start dealing with the Spanish Inquisition, what do you see here? He's saying that the Portuguese Jews remained to be dark, melanated people. Now, of course, in London, in Britain, some of the places that I pointed out, the synagogue that they went into, they were all dark, melanated people. But this is where they're going to get into touching on a little bit about Germany and why they look different. Right, here we go. Right. But again, he said that the Portuguese Jewish people who marrying always among one another beget children like themselves. So saying that the Portuguese Israelites were dark melanated people. Dark melanated people. You can't get around it. Consequently, the swarthiness of their complexion is entailed upon their whole race, even in the northern regions. Now, peep this out. But the Jews who are originally of Germany, notice what it says. The Jews who are what? Originally of Germany, those German Jews, right? Makes you think about Mike Brown. I took the link out of here because I didn't want to get into it today. I should have left it here. When Professor Mike Brown, did I leave it here or did I take it out? Yeah, I think I took it out. When Professor Mike Brown was insinuating that they are Ashkenazi, but not Ashkenazi, that his people traveled to Germany and took on a name of the Ashkenaz, basically saying that they jacked the Ashkenazi, the original Khazarians of the name. Man, it's just all over the place. If I can pull up let me see if I could include that here. If not, we'll just save that for tomorrow. Let me see here. Yeah, here it is. This is him saying how they took the name. So I'm going to bring this in real quick. He's going to describe you're going to hear with his own mouth as this video is uploading, how his own people took a name, took a culture, according to him, that didn't belong to them. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. Makes no sense. Makes no sense. All right. Makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense. All right. So moderators, I just went on to put this Torah person out because we're not dealing with grafted in and all this other stuff. That's I just don't have tolerance for anyone coming in here into what we're teaching and bringing up all this nonsense. So I put the person out, and 613 Torah, you could just take that somewhere else, because we're not going to tolerate that here. If you don't agree with what we're doing here, take it somewhere else. You don't have to blog here. Take that somewhere else. Like I would say in the video that I did here, a while back, if you don't like what's going on over here, if you don't agree with it, take it somewhere else. Take it somewhere else. And matter of fact, let me see if I can do this here. Matter of fact, here is a video that's going to help you redirect you where you need to take that nonsense at.
Take that back to church. 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 Take that back to church.
So you guys get the gist of it. So family, I have no tolerance for it. So if you want to come in here with all that grafted stuff and everything, being a distraction, take that stuff back over to the church. We're over here. We're just teaching foundational, and we're not even dealing with that subject. If you want to deal with the subject, that's one thing if we're dealing with that subject. But you're being a distraction. You're trolling, so we don't need that over here. All right. So moderators, I went on and did you a number right here. So I redirected that person, take that stuff back over to the church. But getting back to the source here, we see here, it says Jews who are originally of Germany. Notice what it says, Jews who are originally of Germany. Those, for example, I have seen at Prague are not blacker than the rest of their countrymen. All right. So it's saying that in a nutshell, the Jews, the German Jews, they look just like the countrymen, look just like the locals. They look just like the locals. right? So this is a video clip of Dr. Mike Brown of his contradiction of what he said about the Ashkenazi Jewish community and his connection to them. But let's hear the contradiction real quick. This is the video I mentioned.
So a little over 1,000 years ago, as Jewish people scattered around the world had now immigrated in Europe and now were living in the Rhineland in Germany, they looked at the name Gomer in Genesis 10, and they connected Gomer with Germany, so they took on the identity of the name Ashkenaz. It has nothing to do with Ashkenaz in the Bible, which is a descendant of Japhet. It's just a name that was taken. Okay, it's that simple. Just like my last name Brown doesn't refer to the color of my skin or anything else. It was shortened from a Russian name when my grandfather came over at Ellis Island. The name got shortened to Brown. It's just a name. That's all it is. So the idea that Ashkenazi Jews are descended from Japhet is a myth, 100% false.
You cannot make this stuff up, family. He said that his people took the identity of the Khazarians, an identity that's connected to Japheth. Then he says that his forefather, his great-grandfather, grandfather, whomever, or maybe even his father, Brown, is a Russian name, a Jewish Russian name. When you understand the Ashkenazis, descendants of Gomer, the Scythians, the Khazarians, they occupied the territory of Russia, Ukraine, that whole area. Family, you cannot make this stuff up. That's why I say if we said what he said, anyway. So this is what this source is explaining. The Jews who are originally of Germany, those, for example, I have seen at Prague, are not blacker than the rest of their countrymen, saying that the German Jews per se look just like the local people. There is no difference between the two. So if they intermarried and mixed with other people, how could Paul's prediction in Romans about the future calling of the Jews ever be realized? See, this is one of the questions that this book posed. It's in this book, and I want to show you, said they asked the question, if they intermarried and mixed with other peoples, how could Paul's prediction in Romans, the letter to the Romans, about the future of the Jews ever be realized? Right? So this is where this question comes from. It says here, and though the Jews were a race, they were an exceptional one insofar as they reputedly could never commingle with others. In other words, after all, if they intermarried and mixed with other peoples, how could Paul's prediction in Romans about the future calling of the Jews ever be realized? Wait a minute. So here it is. This is James Shapiro, and I believe this is a Jewish person who wrote this book. I didn't get a chance to look up. Normally I look up the authors, but just looking at the name, this looks like a Jewish person, right? But this person is saying, how can, Paul's prediction, how can this be an accurate prediction if we're saying that the Jewish community, or the Israelites, so to speak, what he's using the word Jew, mixed and mingled with everyone? If you're saying that they look just like the Romans, they took on the Romans, all this other stuff. That's what he's saying here. How can you say this prophecy is a valid prophecy? How can you make a distinction if you're saying that all the Israelites mixed and mingled with everyone? then basically this prophecy that there's no need to use the term Israel or Jew or whatever you want to use. That's what this is saying here. And though the Jews were a race, they were an exceptional one insofar as they reputedly could never commingle with others. In other words, after all, if they intermarry and mix with other peoples, how could Paul's prediction in Romans about the future calling of the Jews ever be realized? Some writers pointed to the Jews dark or black. So he's making it clear that the writers back that during this time that he's his time and even prior to, is referring to the Israelites being what? Dark, being black, not looking like the Romans. As you see here, some writers pointed to the Jews dark or black skin as a marker for their racial difference. In addition, as members of a religious community from which the founders of the church had emerged, notice what this says here: Jews were at once the opposite of Christians and at the same time potential Christians. From a Christian perspective, the only thing that stood in the way of their conversion, right? So again, I just want to reiterate this right here. I knew you could be a Jew, right? This is a quote, and I'm going to go back to this book, but let me go back here. But they're making it clear, and when you go into the details of this, this is what I'm reading from, right? This is where he's making it clear that the Israelites, as I highlighted thus far, were dark, melanated people. All right. So, but here's a quote from Paul Isaiah, 1655. Paul Isaiah. Notice what this writer says, and you can look this quote up. I knew you to be a Jew, for you Jews have a peculiar color of face different from the form and figure of other men, which thing hath often filled me with admiration. For you are black and uncomely and not white as other men. This is Paul Isaiah in 1655. This is a quote that he shared. All right. This is a quote that he shared. Okay. So what are some of the untruths that we've inherited as a people? So I gave you a source here. And in that source, it makes it clear that the Israelites were dark, melanated people. Shakespeare and his contemporaries, all of them at that time, they made it clear that the Israelites were dark, melanated people. And as they highlighted in the source I shared, that the Portuguese Israelites were dark, melanated people. Can't get around it. Right? You were told that the Israelites are white, right? That was one of the shams. We were told that that the Israelites were white, right? We were told that the Israelites were white. And I'm sure you all heard this before. So let's unpack this. What was the skin complexion of the ancient Hebrews that was living in Chaldees? Right? What was the complexion of the ancient Chaldees? Actually, this should have been the Chaldees. But anyway, but we can still, tie this into Abraham because he was an ancient Hebrew living in the Chaldees. But let's go into the source. What was the skin complexion of the ancient Hebrew Abraham? What was the skin complexion of the ancient Hebrew Israelites? What was Abraham? Where was Abraham born and where did he dwell? Genesis chapter 11, verse 27, starting at verse 27, it says, now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begat Abram, Nahor, Haran, and Haran begat Lot, which was Abraham's nephew. So all the descendants of Lot, right? All of these guys we're describing here are Hebrews. They all are descendants of Eber. So, and Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity in Ur of Chaldees. So they were living in this place. They were living in this territory. Terah, Abraham, Nahor, Haran, Abraham, Nahor, Haran, these are brothers. These are relatives. So Lot was the son of Haran, which was Abraham's nephew or Abram's nephew. Verse 29, and Abram and Nahor took them wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife, Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Iscah. But Sarah was barren, she had no child. Verse 31, and Terah took Abram his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his son's son, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law. So Lot, of course, is Terah's grandson. And Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth with them from Ur of Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan. And they came into Haran and dwelt there. So Stephen made it clear, right? He declared that Yahweh first called Abram in Ur of Chaldees. Let's look at here. Let's go to Acts chapter 7, verse 1. Let's see what Stephen says about this. He's going to confirm that the Most High called Abram while he was still in Ur Chaldee. Then said the high priest, are these things so? And he said, men, brethren, and fathers, hearken. Elohim of glory appeared unto our father Abraham when he was in Mesopotamia, before he dwelt in Haran or Sharon. And he said unto him, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred, and come into the land which I will shew thee. So Yahweh, according to Stephen's account of Abraham's story, reminded Abraham of the initial call. So when we go to verse 4, and it's still in the same chapter, here it is. Then came he out of the land of Chaldeans and dwelt in Haran, and from thence his father was dead. He removed him into this land wherein ye now dwell. All right. So they were all dwelling in this territory. So Genesis chapter 1, verse 2 is going to confirm this. Now Yahweh said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will shew thee, and I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. So what was the skin complexion of the ancient Hebrew patriarch Abraham? Well, remember, Abraham was born in Ur of Chaldees. So what is the skin complexion of the Chaldees? Let's go to this source here. All right, let's go to the source here. So an anacalypse, let's go here. Let's see what it says, right? It says, let's see here. Making sure I got it here. All right, yeah. Okay, because it's a little delay on my end for some reason. In consequence of the prejudice, for it is really prejudice. So this source is written by Godfrey Higgins, anacalypse or anacalypsis, an attempt to draw aside the veil of the Sadic ISIS or whatever. I'm not, forgive me if I'm butchering these words down below here. But anyway, but this is what it says here. In consequence of the prejudice, for it is really prejudice against the Negro. He's making it clear. It's really, man, they really hate us when you get to this point in time, right? Remember, when you go to that source that I highlighted, that Shakespeare source, they make it clear inside there that I believe they said it was around the 17th century where you start seeing this insertion of the hatred towards our people, skin complexion. It was the Europeans, as they began to conquer, that began to push that institution of race, the hatred for our skin complexion. It's in that source. So, in consequence of the prejudice, for it is really prejudice against the Negroes, or I ought rather to say against the possibility of a Negro being learned and scientific arising from an acquaintance with the present Negro character. I admit with great difficulty the theory of all the early astronomical knowledge of the Chaldees having been acquired or invented by his race, and that the Chaldees were originally who? Look what it says. The Chaldees were originally Negroes. Come on, family. The Chaldees was originally Negroes. And so this is where you start getting the trolls in who want to come up with all kinds of things, just kind of like this clip that I played here. This is where you start getting these type of comments like, it doesn't matter and all this other stuff. We grafted in. This is where you start getting this stuff.
It does not matter what color Jesus was. What matters is that he came to the earth, lived a perfect life, died a death for the sins of the world, and then conquered the grave, proving that he is the Son of God. That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
Come on, family. See, that's where you start getting this. Well, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what color. Come on, family. So we see the Chaldees, they were originally Negroes. And notice what this says here, right? It says here, it goes on to say, but this prejudice wears away when I go to the precursors of the Brahmins, the Buddhists, and when I reflect upon the skill in the fine arts which they must have possessed when they executed the beautiful and most ancient sculptures in the Museum of the India House, and the knowledge of astronomy shown in their cycles of stones, right, et cetera, that the Buddhists were Negroes. The icons of the God or their God clearly prove it. Come on, family. You can't make this stuff up. It's a specific group of people that began to, the Europeans that began to whitewash everything. So the early astronomical knowledge of the Chaldees having been acquired or invented by a race that the Chaldees were originally Negroes. Again, this is from Godfrey Higgins, Anacalypsis, an attempt to draw aside the veil of the Sadic Isis, right? Volume 2, 1836, page 364. So what is the skin complexion of the ancient Israelites? The Israelite skin complexion would be that of the Negro, dark melanated people, right? Abraham and Sarah, they were Negroes who lived in Ur of Chaldee. Abraham the Negro had a son, Isaac, with Hagar the Egyptian. Let me say that again. Abraham the Negro had a son, Isaac, with Hagar the Egyptian. So let's go to biblical to confirm this with the scriptures, biblical confirmation. Let's go to Genesis chapter 16, verse 1. Let's confirm this. Now, Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had an handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abram, behold, now Yahweh has restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abraham hearkened to the voice of Sarai. This is not the Most High telling Abraham to bring another woman into their bedroom. This is his wife, Sarai. Verse 3. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her handmaid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt there 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband, Abram, to be his wife. Verse 4. And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. Let me read it again. And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that he had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. So what skin complexion? What was the skin complexion of Hagar's Egyptian ancestors? What were their skin complexion? Were they olive? No. Were they modern Arabs? No. Did they look Middle Eastern? No. And see, the Arab invasion of Egypt, let me just give clarity here. During the reign of Umar, the second caliph of the Arab armies under the leadership of Amir ibn al-As invaded and conquered Egypt in 639 AD. So those modern Arabs that you see today, they're not the original. They're not the original. They are not the original. They know it. You know what I mean? They know it. That's why they're doing everything that they can to suppress this truth. So guess what? Anything that's connected to the Israelites, they have to what? Whitewash. They have to whitewash. They know that the ancient Israelites or the ancient Egyptians and the ancient Israelites and all those guys, they know that they were dark, melanated people. They know that they were dark, melanated people.
But the CT scan has one more surprise for Alejandro. Shammai's ethnicity.
Well, they have just told me that Shammai had Nubian features, which means that their ruling family was probably Nubian, and that was unexpected.
Examining Shammai's anatomy closely, the thickness of his bones and the shape of his nasal cavity, the anthropologists think he was a black African, likely from neighboring Nubia. A huge revelation that challenges the prevailing image of the Egyptian ruling class.
We always thought the ancient Egyptian elites were Mediterranean type. We always thought the ancient Egyptian elites were Mediterranean type. We always thought the ancient Egyptian elites were Mediterranean type. We always thought the ancient Egyptian elites were Mediterranean type. And in this sense, Shammai is representing the society of the frontier in which different ethnic groups were mixed. At the end, it doesn't matter the color of your skin. Shammai was Egyptian. At the end.
Now, the problem for me, it's not about color. It's not about white and black. This is a very reductive way to talk about things. This is the way that Americans talk about it. I'm very sorry. Like, I come from Egypt. Egypt has a very diverse color palette. People can look like me or they can look deeper skin tone like Anwar Sadat, who comes from a Nubian origin. It's not about black and white. It's not about black and white. It's not about black and white.
It just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter.
It does not matter what color Jesus was. What matters is that he came to the earth, lived a perfect life, died a death for the sins of the world, and then conquered the grave, proving that he is the Son of God. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
See, family, that's what you hear when they know that this truth is what it is. When it comes to us, once you start backing them up into a corner, oh, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. So let's go to this source. You have other sources. I just use one source here just to show you and give you the point, case in point of the Turks that you see there today are not original. They're not the original people there. when we're dealing with the Egyptians. So this is the Outlines of Ancient Egyptian History, 1892. It says here, how often do we see in Eastern monarchies and even in European states a difference of origin between the ruling class to which the royal family belongs and the mass of the people? We need not leave Western Asia and Egypt. We find there Turks ruling over nations, to the race of which they do not belong. Although they have adopted their religion, notice what it says, although they have adopted their religion in the same way as the Turks of Baghdad, who are Finns, now reign over Semites, Turanian kings may have led into Egypt and governed a population of mixed origins where the Semitic elements was prevalent. All right, so it goes on to say, and notice the area that they talk about. If we consider the mixing up of races which took place in Mesopotamia in remote ages, now I gave you a source because see, this is 1892, and in 1892, remember, starting around the 17th century is when they started pushing this Caucasian image, just really pushing that doctrine. Because in the 16th century, the 15th and 16th century, they made it clear the Israelites were Negroes. They made it clear that the Egyptians were Negroes, were dark melanated people. So this place of Mesopotamia, just dealing with what? The Chaldees, Ur of Chaldee. So here, this source is saying it was a mixed race of Semitic people. See, that word race is a word of confusion, but notice what it says, the invasion which the country had to suffer, the repeated conflicts of which it was the theater. There is nothing extraordinary that populations coming out of this land should have presented a variety of races and origins. See, that's the nonsense that we're hearing today of the variety. And that's what they're running to. But that source is making it clear that the Turks is not originally from that area. So the Ottoman, in other words, the Turks invaded Africa in 1534 and remained a ruling power in Africa for 4 centuries and established 5 separate administrations in Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, and Eritrea, right? So what was the skin complexion of Hagar's Egyptian ancestors? What was the skin complexion of Hagar's Egyptian ancestors? Well, let's see. See, this is what they won't show you. They'll show you these made up images, bust of Nefertari. But this is Nefertari right here. Ahmose Nefertari. This is what they don't show you. They'll show you some bust that was created, that image that they began around the 17th century. This is actually in the British Museum. This is Nefertari, that the image that you won't see. You see the braids. You see this this is a melanated Egyptian. This is not some crazy stuff or what we see today. You see it right here. You see it here. And this is her maid, Dame Rai, nursemaid to Queen Ahmose Nefertari. Now, look at the woolly hair. Let me zoom it in. Look at the woolly hair. This is woolly hair. And then if we go into the term that would normally be used, the Negroid infinity, that's the term that they would use, the Negroid infinity, the woolly hair, the nose, the texture and all of that, the hair texture. This is, going back to Nefertari, dark melanated. This is a melanated woman. Her handmaid, melanated woman. These are wigs from the 18th dynasty. Now, the highlights that you see here are strictly from the chemicals that they were used to preserve the mummies during that time. But Look at the texture. This is Negroid, like they would say, of Negroid affinity. Right? Come on, family. These are some additional images. And the only reason why you don't see the locks all the way down, this is chemicals that cause this. The hair to straighten the way it's straightened. Because if you go to the tips of it, you still see the locks here. But here, this is because of the chemicals that was used, that the Egyptians used, that caused the hair to straighten out. But look at the braids. All right. And look at the characteristics here. All right. So what was Cleopatra's, part, what was Cleopatra part African? How was she described back in the 15th century, the 16th century? How did Shakespeare and his comrades and the people of that time describe her? Because in this modern time, in the modern time, see, they'll go with this nonsense of this, when they think of Cleopatra, and many of our brothers and sisters done ran with it. Oh yeah, Cleopatra, Cleopatra, yeah, she more than likely was Roman because her father was Roman, so that makes her Roman. So she would have been Greek rather. She's Greek. Just run with stuff without actually doing the proper due diligence and research. Come on, family. Come on, family. So let's see what Shakespeare says about Cleopatra. Let's see what Shakespeare says. Because it's interesting that when it comes to the Negro, the one drop rule apply to us. It's something about, especially the Negroes in this country. It's like nobody want to be connected to us. Everyone feel like they can disrespect the Negroes in this country. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? You got other Negroes that would disrespect Negroes here. I mean, one of my pet peeves, and no offense to some of my brothers and sisters, but man, when I would go overseas, man, some of them would talk to me like, hey, like I didn't know anything. Like they got to tell me my history. Come on, family. I'm sure you guys have dealt with that before. It's like everyone just pile up on these Negroes here in the United States. Anyone can disrespect us here in the United States. They don't make videos on those that are over in Africa. They don't make videos of those that are in Britain and some of these other countries. They focus on the Negroes here. They don't mess with the Negroes out in the Caribbean. They just focus on the Negroes in this United States of America. So, are there any writings that supports her skin complexion? So let's go to sources prior to the 18th century. The LA Times archives, right? See, family, I researched. I got this out of the LA Times archives, which led me to some other sources. Arguing the race of the most fascinating figure in history, May 14th, 1989. Notice what it says here. Arguing the race of the most fascinating figure in history until the rise of the doctrine of white supremacy. Notice what it says. Until the rise of the doctrine of white supremacy. And this is what we're seeing. We're seeing just how far white supremacy has gone to manipulate the minds of people, including, and when I say including, I'm talking about educators. I'm not just referring to the lay people in academia. If you understand Hawass, that Egyptian archaeologist, you will see he's corrupt. Read the book Black Genesis. Look at how he tried to blacklist Diop, who came up with the most accurate test to test the Egyptians to prove that they are dark melanated people. Doesn't matter how old the body is. And once he proved it on a few, they didn't want him to touch those ancient Israelites. I mean, not ancient Israelites, those ancient Egyptians in the British Museum. So notice, I'll read this again. It says, until the rise of the doctrine of white supremacy, Cleopatra the Seventh was generally pictured as colored. Let me say that again. Until the rise of the doctrine of white supremacy. So anyone that try to make her into a Caucasian, guess what? They are dealing with white supremacy. So before I finish reading this, let me see. Do I still have the clip here? If not, if I took it down, I won't play it. But I have a clip here that I did just naming some of the older historians that's from the 2nd and 3rd century BCE, before the Common Era. I took it down. All right, I don't have it up. Like Herodotus and others. Yeah, I took it down. Anyway, but let's continue here. Until the rise of the doctrine of white supremacy, Cleopatra VII was generally pictured as colored. Shakespeare and Antony and Cleopatra calls her tawny. In his day, mulattoes were called tawny Moors. Let me say that again. In his day, mulattoes were called tawny Moors. In Act 1, Scene 5, Cleopatra calls herself black. Think on me that am with Phoebus, Amoris pinches black. Right? So it goes on to say, the 16th century, Cleopatra was regarded as a Negro woman. Let me say that again. Remember I said when you go back to the 15th and 16th century, the Israelites were viewed as being dark melanated people. The Egyptians, likewise, Cleopatra was viewed as being a Negro. But when it comes to things that for example, we're supposed to be so primitive, right? We're supposed to be so primitive, even though primitive simply means their origins, but the way it's used today, that we're supposed to be so uneducated as a people that societies that have highly advanced societies cannot be connected to us. It has to be connected to the Caucasians. So the 16th century, Cleopatra was regarded as a Negro woman. Plutarch describes her as a brown-skinned girl with crinkly hair and voluptuous figure. Most anthropologists accept that populations with extensive contacts interbreeds, and they do not deny that some historians have claimed for their own races the achievement of prominent figures of other races. Notice what it says here. I hope y'all caught on here. I hope y'all grab hold of what this source is saying, what this article is saying. And they do not deny, in other words, these archaeologists, these historians, they know, these anthropologists, they know that many of these people, these educators, they know. It says they do not deny that some historians have claimed for their own races the achievement of prominent figures of other races. The Greeks performed such a transformation on Aesop's, the black Ethiopian slave, and his fables. So they're even saying Aesop's fable, guess what? That is Ethiopian, black Ethiopian slave and his fables. The Greeks hijacked it. Josephus talks about it. You guys know when I make reference to Josephus, I didn't put it here. I should have put it here, of how Josephus said the Greeks were hijacking other people's accomplishments and things from their cultures and making it their own. So you see it here. This archived article is giving you the lowdown. So let me go ahead and put this inside the comment section, because I encourage you guys to go back and read this entire link. See, this is the stuff many stay clear of. Many stay clear of this stuff. Let me see here. All right. Let me put this LA Times link inside the chat for you guys to read the entire article at your leisure. All right. Okay. All right. So, and they do not deny that some historians have claimed for their own races the achievements of prominent figures of other races. The Greeks performed such a transformation on Aesop, the black Ethiopian slave, and his fables. Cleopatra's father, Ptolemy VII, shows pronounced Negro traits. Wait a minute, did they just say this? Ptolemy VII shows pronounced Negro traits. As for Cleopatra, there is no bona fide portrait of her, Hollywood and Miss Taylor notwithstanding. So this is telling you that there's no image of her. Go figure. They can find images of everything else, but not her. Even her sister proven to be of Negroid infinity, right? But it's saying, the image that you see of Cleopatra, Elizabeth Taylor, the late Elizabeth Taylor. So Antique Gems and Rings, 1872 says, as late as the 16th century, Cleopatra was regarded as a Negro woman. So let's go to Antique Gems and Rings from the 18th century, right? On page 326. This was published in 1872. But let's see what it says here about Cleopatra. Notice what it says. The same age was a little later extremely fruitful in heads of Negroes and also negresses. So we see Negroes that's dealing with the men, negresses, the women. The latter often in the character of Cleopatra holding to her breast the ops. There is reason to believe that some of the latter are intended to commemorate the renowned black concubine of Clement VII, the mother of Alessandro. But in a nutshell, this is telling you that Cleopatra is referred to as a Negro, negresses. This is telling you that Cleopatra, confirming just what the LA Times said, is regarded to being a Negro. So let's go to this play. Let's go to Shakespeare's play, right? And let's see what is said here, right? This is dealing with Cleopatra here, right? Scene 1. It says, have glowed like plated Mars, now bend, now turn. The office and devotion of their view upon a tawny front, his captain's heart, which in the scuffles of great fights hath burst. The buckles on his breast reneges all temper. So Anthony and Cleopatra, right? 20. They made reference to Cleopatra being 20. Act 1, Scene 1. All right. But they made reference to Cleopatra being 20. So what is 20? What is 20? What is 20? But let's go to the explanatory notes of this play before we get to the definition. Notice what the notes say. It says 20, dark countenance. Cleopatra was a Greek, but she usually represents a darker skin. That's what this says here. Dark countenance. Cleopatra was a Greek, but she is usually represented as darker skin, just confirming what I said. Right? So what we see today is nothing more than, racist. It's racist. It's all racist. Racism. All racism. White extremists. Tawny, dark countenance. Let me read it right here. Tawny front, dark countenance. Cleopatra was a Greek, but she is usually represented as darker skinned. So let's go to the Webster Complete Dictionary of the English Language, 1886. Let's see what tawny means. You see it here, but I'm going to zoom it in. You see here, right? Of a dull yellowish brown color, like the thing's tan, but it says here, or it is, or persons who are sunburnt as a tawny Moor or Spaniard. Wait a minute, but this goes right back to what? The Portuguese, the Spanish Inquisition, the Portuguese Jews back in the 16th century. They knew that they were all dark, melanated people. And as you see here, this is just zoomed in, 20, of a dull yellowish brown color, like things tanned. But it says here, this is the kicker, or persons who are sunburnt as a tawny Moor or Spaniard. So a tawny Moor is what? Dark. That's what it's saying here. Spaniard, dark, melanated. So why was Moses, Joseph, the Messiah, the Apostle Paul, why were they mistaken for Egyptians? How was the Messiah, of course, Joseph and Miriam with the Messiah, how were they able to lay low in Egypt? Come on, family. Are there any scriptures that proves that the Israelites are Negroes? We got plenty of sources, but I'm going to continue here. Family, I'm telling you, they really did a number. Yeah, Walking the Truth. I remember that National Geographic magazine on the cover. I remember them having Black Pharaoh's face on the cover. And it's so hard. I'm going to try to get that source. I tried to get a copy of that source, just to have for record. It's hard to get it. It's hard to get it. Hard to get that publication, man, a copy of that publication. So are there any scripture that proves the Israelites are Negroes? Let's start with Exodus chapter 1, verse 7. Now, some of you guys already are going to recognize some of this from some of my teachings in the past. But hey, this is maybe a refresher to you, but this is not for those that are babes. So those that are just coming across this information, let's not downplay it or make it seem as if something's wrong or make any suggestions that something is wrong with them for not knowing this information. So let's be very conscientious of those that may not know this information. All right. So Exodus chapter 1, verse 7. And the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and waxed exceeding mighty, and the land was filled with them. So this is coming from Crania Aegyptica. So we see here, Exodus chapter 1, verse 7 is making it clear that the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly. And I want to make this clear. Not all of Israel were mixed and meshed with the Egyptians, contrary to what many would say and think. There was a separation. That's why you have what is called the mixed multitude. Those are some of the Israelites that were what? Mixing and meshing. Not all of Israel mixed and meshed with the Egyptians. All right. So, and the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and waxed exceeding mighty, and the land was filled with them. So when we go to Crania Aegyptica, it says here by Samuel Morton, page 66, it says here, if it be allowable to make these data the basis of calculation for the past 35 centuries, it will follow that upwards of 10 million Negroes have been brought as bondsmen into Egypt during that period. The vast influx of Negroes into the valley of the Nile must necessarily have left its impression on the physical traits of the Egyptians themselves in modern times, as seen in the Copts and in more distant periods, as proved by the Negroid heads, in which both the configuration and expression are too obvious to be mistaken. But it may be inquired, how does it happen that Negroes of their descendants should be found in the catacombs if they constitute a Manile or slave caste in Egypt? Right? It goes on to say on page 66, Negroes were numerous in Egypt, but their social position in ancient times was that the same that it now is, that of servants and slaves. Come on, family. This is an 1866 publication written by Samuel Morton, who was a cranium expert. So they didn't have DNA, but cranium. So he's making it clear, confirming the scriptures, saying that the Israelites were numerous in Egypt. He quotes this almost the similar words of the scriptures. Negroes were numerous in Egypt, but their social position in ancient times was the same that it now is, that of servants and slaves. Now, I got a more in-depth lesson about the Passover that really goes into the plagues, and I really go in and showing additional facts about Israelite names in Egyptian publications. I encourage you guys to watch the lessons I did on the Passover, and that's in the foundational playlist. All right, anything but the Negroes, I think is what it's called, far as the Passover. All right, so we confirming that we're ancient Israelites. As Samuel Morton made it clear, the social position was the same, that of slaves, servants and slaves, servants, indentured servitude, and slaves. Exodus chapter 6, verse 25. Notice what it says, right? And this is dealing with another person by the name of Phinehas and Eleazar, Aaron's son, took him one of the daughters of Putiel to wife, and she bare him Phinehas, Payanakas, right? Or Nakas. Let me say that again. Nakas. These are the heads of the fathers of the Levites according to their families, right? So 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 3, we'll see that name again, right? Same thing. Eli had sons. Eli was a high priest. Aaron was a high priest. And you can see Phinehas in Numbers chapter, I believe, 25. We see here two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, the priest of Yahweh, Pi Nakas, were there. So when we go to the Easton's Bible Dictionary, 1894, let's see the definition of Phinehas here. It says, Phinehas, mouth of brass. In other words, boldness. He spoke with power. Doesn't that sound familiar? The Messiah, Revelation chapter 1. His voice, the sound of many waters. That's Phinehas. I know some of you guys probably didn't catch on to that. I taught this years ago with Anything But the Negroes, a Martian Christ versus the Negro Messiah. So Phinehas, mouth of brass, authority, the voice of many waters. It says, or from old Egypt, the Negro. So this name came from Egypt. This is Egyptian name, all right? Phinehas, mouth of brass, the Negro, son of Eleazar, the high priest. While yet a youth, he distinguished himself in Shittim. But then when we go on here, notice what it says, Numbers chapter 25. That's what I made reference to. So what are some of the untruths, family? We got proof. We got sources upon sources upon sources upon sources. Come on, family. That's things that you can put into your library. Some of the sources I just highlighted. What are some of the untruths you've inherited? What was King David's skin complexion? Right? Let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 11 and 12. Let's see what it says, starting at verse 11. And Samuel said unto Jesse, are here all thy children? And he said, there remaineth yet the youngest, and behold, he keepeth the sheep. And Samuel said unto Jesse, send and fetch him, for we will not sit down till he come hither. And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and withal of a beautiful countenance, and goodly to look to. And Yahweh said, arise, anoint him, for this is he. So you see how David is described here. Now, he was ruddy and withal of a beautiful countenance. All right, so now we're going to do some translation comparisons. This should be translation comparisons, but anyway, let's do some different translation comparisons to see what other translations are saying about the description of David. Right, let's go back here. Again, verse 12 from the KJV. And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and withal of a beautiful countenance and goodly to look to. And Yahweh said, arise, anoint him, for this is he. Let's go to the NLT, the New Living Translation. So Jesse sent for him. Notice what it says. He was dark and handsome with beautiful eyes. This is the New Living Translation. This is the New Living Translation. So Jesse sent for him. He was dark and handsome with beautiful eyes. And Yahweh said, this is one, anoint him. So this is the New Living Translation. All right. And see, that's the thing. Like you just pointed out, Bethia. Yeah, people would try to say, because there are translations that are try to point to his head, red being his hair. Right. So let's go to another translation here. This is the New Living Translation. So here we just did that's the New Living Translation. I think that's the same one. Yeah, that's the same one. Let me go to another one. The ISV, International Standard Version. Notice what it says. And he sent and brought him. He had a dark, healthy complexion. Notice what it says. He had a dark, healthy complexion. Remember, dark, healthy. Remember, ruddy describes the healthiness, the health of the skin. And notice what it says. He had dark, healthy complexion with beautiful eyes, and he was handsome. Right? Then we go to another one. Right? The NHEB Bible. Right? Notice what it says here. Right? It says here, and he sent and brought him in, and he was reddish brown and had beautiful eyes and was handsome. So this one says reddish brown, but we're still dealing with a darker color. So let's go to the source, because all what you see here, especially this one here, dark, healthy complexion with beautiful eyes. It ties right into the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia definition of ruddy. Remember this. I'm going to keep reiterating this. Ruddy is the form taken by the adjective red when used as a term of praise of the human skin, and this is its use in the Bible. In other words, the Hebrew and Greek words are all usual words for red or to be red. The dark-skinned Hebrews found great beauty and a clear complexion. Let me say it again. The dark-skinned Hebrews found great beauty and a clear complexion. So if we toggle back, let's toggle back. Let's go back a couple. Notice what he said. Notice what we see here. He had dark, healthy complexion. Dark, healthy complexion. Let's go back just to make sure we tie it in together. The dark-skinned Hebrews found great beauty and a clear complexion. But I know we have some people in the chat. No matter what you do, no matter what you teach, like I said, you're gonna always have these people trolling. They're gonna troll with comments like this.
It does not matter what color Jesus was. What matters is that he came to the earth, lived a perfect life, died a death for the sins of the world, and then conquered the grave, proving that he is the Son of God. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
It just doesn't matter. 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 It just doesn't matter.
Life is like a hurricane
Yeah, family. You know, you're gonna always have those the corner, so to speak, the handful of people that want to push and interject stuff like that. It doesn't matter. Anyway, the dark-skinned Hebrews again found great beauty and a clear complexion. So Yah the Father, right? I know y'all probably heard this before, of some of the things that we were handed down, some of the untruths that was handed down, that Yah the Father has no color. It's all right for Christ to have a color. It's all right for many to say Christ and the Father is the same. Because in Christianity, many of them teach that Christ is the Father. But when you break down and say that Christ is a dark melanated person, but then, oh, no, then they want to make a separation. Oh, well, you know what? No, actually, God is colorless. God is colorless. God doesn't have any fingers. God doesn't have any hands. That's when they all of a sudden want to make a distinction. Or between God the Father, God the Son, so to speak. But they're quick to tell you to push this Trinitarian doctrine that Christ is the Father. Even though Paul tells us that the Messiah came in the image of the Father. Even though the scripture tells us that the Father, Yahweh, took his hands and placed it over Moses' eyes, but then some of these Christians, and I understand it because I understand the theology, because they'll teach you in Christianity, you're taught wherever you see the interaction of the Most High with man, when you see any physical parts of the Most High, that's the incarnated Christ. That's Christ and is making an appearance. Family, that's not true. Especially, now you could say you could possibly use that when you're dealing with Abraham, right? When it says Yahweh came and visited him and Abraham cooked with him. But no, I'm not going to let you use that for the Most High taking his hand and placing it over Moses' eyes. Because if that's the case, then Abraham should have died. It was the Most High who covered Abraham's face. It was the Most High who took his finger and wrote the 10 Commandments down on the tablets. The covenant. So Yah the Father has no color. I know we all done heard this one, man. Does Yah the Father have a skin complexion? Does he have a color? So the Father is going to tell the Israelites to have all these laws for leprosy, laws that you cannot have any blemishes in your skin, cannot be bleeding out, laws that if you change pigmentation, in other words, albinism would be considered leprosy. People with albinism cannot stay out in the sun. Most have poor eyes, so that just completely eliminates Esau, right? So does Yah the Father have a skin complexion? And again, I know that some want to say, no, the Father doesn't have any color. He's colorless. He's a spirit. So what is the image of the Father? What is the image of the Son? John chapter 14, verse 8. Let's start here. Philip said unto him, Adonai, show us the Father, and it sufficeth us. Yahushua, Jesus the Christ, said unto him, have I been so long time with you, and yet hast thou not known me, Philip? He that has seen me has seen the Father. And how sayest thou then, show us the Father? He's saying, you've been around me all this time, Philip, but now you're going to come with this craziness? You want to come, we're going to hit me with this? You want to see the Father? You see me, you see the Father. Me and the Father are one. That's why you see the response here. Have I been so long time with thee, Philip? And yet hast thou not known me, Philip? He that seen me has seen the Father, and I said, thou then show us the Father. So how saith thou then show us the Father? He's like, oh, wait a minute. You see me, you see the Father. I represent the Father. But we're not going to stop here. The Messiah's descriptions, according to the scripture. When we go to Daniel chapter 10, verse 5 and 6, this gives you a description of the Son. Then I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of Uphaz. His body was also like the beryl, and his face was as the appearance of lightning, and his eyes as lamps of fire. His arms and feet like in color to polished brass, and the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude. Doesn't that sound like Revelation chapter 1, Revelation chapter 2? The consistency we see here. So when we go to the word polished, because I know when we see this word polished here, the first thing that's going to come to mind, many will try to take this and say, hey, it's shiny. It's shiny. It's like brass, shiny. Like when you see instruments, brass instruments, shiny. They'll try to make it into that. So the Hebrew dictionary definition of polished, let's see what it says. It says burnished. Burnished. That's the key word. Burnished. Let's go to the etymological dictionary definition of burnish. Polished by friction to shine, gleam, sparkle. But notice the kicker here. Burnish. That word burnish comes from brun. Burnish comes from the word brun, which means brown. Right? Now notice what we see. Bright, polished brown. The connection to brown might be explained if the original object in mind were wooden ones, the many caused to glow clean. But now remember, family, what I shared with you, and we're going to get to brown in a second, that it was in the 17th century, 18th century, where the white extremist doctrines began to kick in. They began to take words like this to make everything point to being white or a very, very, very light complexion. But notice when we go to brown, let's see what brown says. Dark, dusky. So this word, this is why we got to go to the primitive root word. So we see the Proto-Indo-European, right? But nevertheless, we see here, when we look here, we see bright, we see polished, we see brown. But we have to go to the word that this comes from. Burnish comes from brun. And let's go to brun, which is brown. Let's go here. And this is that same Proto-Indo-European word right here, this pi, the root, bur. Let's go here. Let's see what it says. And it still says here, bur, dark, dusky. That's the key. Dark, dusky. 13th century. Okay? But see, when we start getting here, notice we see it also had a sense of brightness, shining, preserved only in burnish. Now, we still dealing with some dark, melanated people. All right? So burnish comes from the word brunir, which comes from brun. All right? So when we go to Revelation chapter 1, verse 14, notice what it says. His head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire. His feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. We see the same thing repeated in Revelation chapter 2, verse 18, because that's the second witness, right? It says, unto the angel of the church of Thyatira, it says, write these things, saith the son of Elohim, who hath his eyes like unto a flame of fire, and his feet are like unto fine brass. So let's look at this Greek word hair. Notice what it says. Threeks, right? We see threeks. It says uncertain derivative, hair, compare. So it tells us to compare it to this word here. Let's go to this word right here, kome, right? It said threeks is comparable to kome, right? And when we go to kome, let's see what kome says. The hair of the head. Notice what it says, locks. Wait a minute. Did we just prove that the Messiah have locks? We know that locks were very popular among the Israelites when we read Numbers chapter 6, when we read about Solomon, when we read about Ezekiel said that the Most High pulled him by the hair of his lock. So David Hunter, I agree. That would be disrespectful. Wouldn't it be disrespectful not to care about what the Messiah actually look? Because guess what? Anyone that's trying to make him into a European, a Caucasian, a European with long hair, blue eyes, they're changing the word. There's not a single passage that supports that description. So they are changing the word. They're changing the words of the scripture, and that's what this cowboy has something to say about that. Listen to what this cowboy said about that.
Now I can't figure it out. If y'all are the chosen ones, shouldn't y'all be obeying better than me? I mean, I even try to keep the fourth commandment. Try to keep the Sabbath day holy. I've spent many of hours trying to figure out which is the right Sabbath day, because we know that old Catholic Church, something a little fishy about them, don't we? With that white Jesus. I mean, here's a white guy telling you black people that your Messiah is not a long-haired white European guy. Your Messiah is Hebrew, my darker-skinned brothers and sisters.
Challenge!
So family, Kome, the Messiah had locks. I didn't even get into the Solomon side of it because I proved that Solomon had locks. The Messiah had locks, family. So Kome means the hair of the head. Locks. Locks. I know that looks familiar, but see, that is a video that I changed the color of the picture, but this is the actual image of the picture. That looks like our hair. That's wool. That's how our hair looks. So the Messiah had locks. His feet like unto fine brass is actually copper. And when we go to the Hebrew dictionary definition of copper, we'll see it here. Not getting into all of this, not trying to go too deep with that. So the Messiah came in the image of Yahweh. He came in his image. Colossians chapter 1, verse 14, it says, in whom we have redemption through his blood, even the forgiveness of sin, who is the image of the invisible Yahweh, the firstborn of every creature. So it's saying that the Messiah is it says again, who is the image of the invisible Yahweh. He is the image of the invisible Yahweh. And when we look at the word, image in Greek, we see ikon. Ikon means, or icon. It says almost similar to where you get the word icon from, icon. It says a likeness, right? It says an example in literal, statue, profile. An image of heavenly things, but it can be what? Literal. So the Messiah is the image of the Father. He's the literal image of the Father. We can't make it into a metaphor. He's the literal image of the Father. So what image is that? Starting with the one who sat on the throne, the one who is sitting on the throne. Let me make it into present tense, right? So Yahweh's description according to Scripture. Yes, his description is in the script. His description is in the Scriptures. Revelation chapter 4, verse 2, because many will try to say, well, the Father doesn't have. No, he does. Or else you're telling me that John is lying here. Daniel lied. Ezekiel lied. Colossians lied. Corinthians rather lied. And immediately I was in the spirit, and behold, a throne was set in heaven, and one sat on the throne. And he that sat was to look upon like a jasper and a sardine stone, and there was a rainbow round about the throne, and the sight unto an emerald. And round about the throne were 24 seats, and upon the seats I saw 24 elders sitting, clothed in white raiment, and they had on their heads crowns of gold. And out of the throne proceeding lightnings and thunderings and voices, and there were 7 lamps burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of Yahweh. And you guys remember this? These are the stones right here. These are the stones. This is the complexion that is being described of the Father. Put your hand up to the screen. It's going to match yours, your skin complexion. See, when you look at it here, you see the different textures of this stone. You got some of the stones that are really, really dark. You got some of these stones with some of the textures are a lighter. But you see, overall, this is how these stones look. This one on the right is more polished. These are polished. But this on the left, this is how the stones look prior to them polishing it, manipulating it, and all of that. And look at the different tones. Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 26, going to echo the same. And above the firmament that was over the heads was the likeness of a throne, as the appearance of a sapphire stone, and upon the likeness of the throne was the likeness as the appearance of a man above upon it. And there you have it again, the sapphire stones. All right. Go to Daniel chapter 7, verse 9. And I beheld, the thrones were cast down. The Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. So we see that not only does the Most High have the skin complexion of us, but he had the hair texture. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. So this is the Father in verse 9. In the same chapter, we see the distinction between the Father, and we're going to see a distinction between he and the Son. When you go to verse 13, this is describing the Son. I saw in the night vision, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. So you see the Father, but you also see the Son. It's right here. There's a distinction. So they described the Father, the one who's sitting on the throne, looking just like the Negro, looking just like the Negro. Yeah, Nate, I started to include that in here for us, Deuteronomy from the Septuagint. I just didn't have time, but yeah, I have read it. And also some additional stuff I was going to put in here from Josephus confirming that as well. But yeah, I read it. All right. But thanks for the input. Really appreciate it. I saw the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And speaking of that, I don't have my Septuagint here because I will pull it out. It's in my my other office. Anyway, I thought I had my Septuagint here. Either it's here in the house in my other room, or it may be at the temple. And actually, you know what? I think it may be at the temple. But nevertheless, we'll stop right here. We'll stop right here. We'll stop right here, family. I gave you more than enough sources. I gave you more than enough sources. Gave you more than enough. We went line by line. Line by line. And that's why you see more and more we see in videos that are making it clear that the sham, we all been hustled. The sham that has taken place. You know, to understand the Israelites, dark melanated people. Ethiopians, dark melanated people. The Egyptians, dark melanated people. Cush, or should I say, because that still ties into the Ethiopians. Canaanites, dark melanated people. The Chaldeans, or the Chaldees, dark melanated people. We can take it all the way back to the beginning, family.
Wells comes face to face with the man he's been searching for. A new portrait of the common ancestor of every man today. Adam. Without the skull, we can't know for sure what Adam looked like. But a combination of genetic evidence, vendors' forensic skills, and cutting-edge computer software suggests he looked something like this. Thousands of years after the Bible, and hundreds of years after Michelangelo, we have a whole new face for Adam.
I was very excited when I first started to get evidence, and it was so counterintuitive. I'd put 20 Europeans and 20 African Americans on a sheet of X-ray film, and every African American showed differences, and all the Europeans looked the same. And I thought I'd mislabeled something, or I thought I'd made some drastic mistake. And we kept repeating and repeating things. As we got more samples from different areas, I realized that it was a difference in the pattern, and that this whole new type of evidence based on mitochondria was going to change the way we thought about modern humans.
Their bones were discovered in Kafse caves near Nazareth in Galilee in 1933. 13 fragile skeletons, one a woman, a tiny baby at her feet. When these bones were first uncovered, they were the oldest complete modern human skeletons ever found.
The numerous skeletons that have been found in caves in Israel at the sites of Kafse and Shkul show us that there were modern humans outside of Africa, over 100,000.
It does not matter what color Jesus was. What matters is that he came to the earth, lived a perfect life, died a death for the sins of the world, and then conquered the grave, proving that he is the Son of God. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
It just doesn't matter. 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 It just doesn't matter.
That's why I'm convinced Jesus was black, you know, because he hasn't come back yet. Like, that's the... He said, I will be back at an hour that you least expected. That is the blackest thing I've ever heard in my life. He's gonna confuse the hell out of everybody, all the white people when he comes back too, because he's like, it's been a minute. White people will be like, it's been 2,000 years, Jesus. What are you talking about?
So, family, there you have it. There you have it. I gave you more than enough information. I encourage you guys to go back and watch part 1, and then also, watch this over again. But watch part 1 again, and then tie that into part 2. I covered a lot of information, and this is the information that I share whenever we do our pop-up Shabbats. So with that being said, family, we'll really appreciate you guys for hanging in there tonight. With that being said, have a blessed remainder of the Shabbat. And I want to encourage everyone, feel free to hit the like and subscribe to the channel. As a matter of fact, let me see if we got any contributions tonight because I didn't pay attention to that. Let me make sure I didn't miss anyone. Because sometimes I could get so focused on what I'm doing and I can forget to acknowledge any contributions. All right. So I am also going to pin in the chat those who would like to contribute to the work that we are doing here. I'll go ahead and put the Cash App information inside the chat. I'll pin it there. And also, I'll make sure that I post in the community channel section of this channel the upcoming feast days for PFR. We'll be live tomorrow. So look out for We Woke Now Extended. That's where we do all of our sermons and lessons are over on that channel. If you haven't subscribed to it, I encourage you guys to subscribe to We Woke Now Extended. And again, family, we're just trying to make sure, trying to do the basic things. We're trying to make sure that those that are truly seeking the Most High, really seeking the truth, get the truth. Without all this other stuff that are added to it. So really appreciate all that you guys have done with the love and support. So I'm just going to pin this message to the top. Also, I want to give a special shout out here. I see a super chat here, or sticker rather. Let me go ahead and give an acknowledgement here to Tammy, Dave, or Dav for the super sticker. Family, let's show some love to Tammy. Really appreciate the love and support for the channel. Thank you for just contributing to good ground. Really appreciate it. Again, like we say to the ministry, the people at our ministry, without the ministry, without the people, my wife and I would just be taking a walk by ourselves. So really appreciate you guys for the love and support of We Woke Now. The moderators really appreciate you guys. And I want you guys to shoot me your information offline because I want to send some gifts out to you guys. So send me an email with your address. I do want to send some gifts out to the moderators to thank you guys for the love and support. And thank you again for Tammy. Thank you for the love and support. And again, guys, enjoy the Shabbat. And if you don't have a place of worship to celebrate the Shabbat, tune into our We Woke Now channel. And I see we're right under 194 likes. Go ahead and hit that like button, get that thumb up. Let's get it well over 200. The more we do that, it helps break this hold. It really takes us out of this algorithm hole that YouTube has placed us in since December, because we were growing at averaging 2,000 subscribers a month. And then YouTube did a number of things that was not good and really dragged the numbers down all the way down to literally like 10. And I knew that was a lot because the emails were coming in showing me how many people were subscribing. But anyway, with that being said, let's see here, Pathaya. Let's see here. What time tomorrow? Normally we start the live about 12. Our worship service starts early, but normally we start the live at 12 Eastern time. And again, yeah, that's right, yeah, son. Let's make a major push to 50K. Let's see if we could get to the 50K before the year is out. Let's see if we could get to there before the year is out. But again, family, really appreciate you guys. We Woke Now Extended. I'll drop the link in the channel real quick, just so that way you guys can have that as well. So let me go to We Woke Now Extended. All right, let's see here. We Woke Now Extended. All right, and let's get We Woke Now Extended. Let's get that. Right now, it's just sitting just under 3,000 subscribers. 3,000 subscribers. It's 2,900 subscribers there. Let's get it up, family. Let's get it over 3,000. Here's the link right here. Let's get the subscribers on We Woke Now Extended before you guys turn in. Let's get the subscribers. Let's get it over that 3,000 threshold. And I want to give a special shout out as well. I see another super chat here. I want to say shout outs to the King's daughter. Thank you for the love and support. Another great lesson, Pastor Kelly Toda. Thank you. Thank you for the love and support. Thank you for the contributions. And family, let's show some love and support for the King's daughter. And again, let's give Sister Tammy, another shout out again for the contributions tonight. So thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you for the love and support. And again, let's get We Woke Now Extended. Let's get it over 3,000. I know it was sitting at 2,900. We have more than enough of us here inside this live right now that we can get it over 3,000. If just, I don't want to sound like I'm in the church. I was about to say, if I could just get 100 people to go over there and just hit, that's the church stuff when they do an offering. If I could get, 50 people to get $25, or if I could get, how they do all that stuff, don't want to sound like that. But again, family, with that being said, I'm not going to prolong the hour. Have to get up early in the morning to prepare for our Shabbat. So with that being said, have a blessed night. And with that being said, remember, as Moses was given the instructions by the Most High, he was told by the Most High to tell the children of Israel in Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 and 14, fear ye not, stand still, see the salvation of Yahweh. These Egyptians that you see here today, you will never have to deal with them again. The Most High will fight for you. But here's the kicker, family. We have to hold our peace. The Hebrew word there is charash, for peace, which means be quiet. Can't go back, can't stay here. Keep moving forward. Shalom.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11, verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14, verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was black. Abraham, born in the city of a black man, called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was the... Jacob had 12 sons. For real, and these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children.
The lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. They want us to sell our souls to barter profit. Like God's property, it's hard to market. So we steady to aim, keep your eyes on target. Cause when you got to drive, yeah, they'd rather you park it. But I don't valet keeping close hands, I'm on bended knee. I'm just a reflection dealing with 8 sections. Art mixed with life, you can feel the convection. You lying, won't sleep tonight.